comparing your first start of like flag football in the UK, it's a couple of mates in a pub,
Yeah.
looking at what Finland and what you were doing there, did you ever kind of think, I'm going to be going to one of the biggest tournaments, looking at the World Championships, but not watching a game just for the fun of it. You're going to be scouting all day, and did you ever think it was going to be like this is how far your flag career would kind of go?
Yeah, I mean, certainly at the beginning, again, when that person first brought up his friend in Austria that played in these leagues or whatever, I certainly was like, bro, it's flag football. Let's relax. Um, but I fell in love with the game, and that actually happened relatively quickly. Like I was, even though like the Buttoners, we had this reputation, and it was true that we didn't really practice, but I worked really hard on the mental side of it. I wish personally that I would have taken physical care of my body more at the time. Like I didn't work out, but like Steve, who played with us, Steve Monge, he just like took immaculate care of himself. So there were a couple of us that worked really hard in certain ways, um, and so I fell in love with the scouting process and learning and stuff. And I think I became pretty decent at it over the years just by doing it a lot. It was just like I would I'm not doing anything. I wouldn't like watch a show. I would find a game online and scout and see what I could steal or see what I could learn or see what, you know, things like that. So I think to answer your question, like when I first started in flag, I think it would get that serious? Not necessarily, but like I'm somebody who in a bunch of different areas in life when I found something and I've been interested in it, like I've worked incredibly hard at it and tried to do it as best as possible. And so I think that's just kind of a natural progression of where the scouting stuff and the analytics and stuff came from.
So we move on to your next country. Obviously, you're now involved in the Portuguese team as well. I think it was right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
what's your role, and again, how did that kind of come about for you?
So in at the end of 2022, my uh, my family and I we got a place in Portugal. Thought it'd be our like kind of summer place. Spend summers there, and just have really liked our time. So I just kind of looked out and reached out to people involved in flag there, and they did have a flag football scene, but it was a little bit more more in its infancy, younger. But you had a few guys that were really passionate. And they were like, "We want to play in Euros. We want to, play in these tournaments, but we got to learn." And so I started just showing up and going to their practices and working with them and seeing like, wow, these guys care. They have some athletes, they have some ability, and they have no idea what they're doing. Just like, and that's probably a little bit harsh, but it was just like, in some ways, reminded me of my experience when I first started working with some of the GB women, and some of the Coventry Cougars. It was just like, wow, they've done this all by themselves. They just need someone to kind of redirect them and such. And so I knew Portugal wasn't going to be competing in the Worlds this year or anything, and we saw a tournament. There's one in Barcelona that they're going to be going to. They're calling it the World Club Championship or something. And there's going to be a lot of good teams, and my U.S. team is actually going to it, and there's a couple other good U.S. teams coming. But I got involved with those guys, and there's a guy, Leandro Vio, who used to play for the Denver Broncos, who's out there and, wanted to help build flag. And so I said, what I can certainly help, like, kind of get me involved in your national team. I'll help build it. I'll help teach it. And then hopefully from there, the guys can learn that, take it back to their club teams, and gradually raise the level. And as and when I can go to other club team stuff and help out there. So that's been a really fun process. What was funny was I saw a post that I had been named head coach without knowing I was being named head coach. So that was fun. But the guys have been great, really enthusiastic. I've also been lucky enough to have some guys from Denmark and Great Britain come out and help me run some run some of our practices. So like Jonas Bo from Denmark came out, Joe Cotterill, Great Britain, have and they were a tremendous help, not just in identifying talent, but also kind of running things because I think these guys are really enthusiastic, but the level of flag that they are at and understanding, like, they didn't really know how to call a defense or what to do or anything. And so there's so much that needs to be done there. But I think they're talented. I think they're enthusiastic. I think they've been getting better. We've been having probably a once a month practice every year. We finally selected the team to go to Barcelona, and I think they have a bright future. And whether they'll be able to, they should be in the Euros next year. Whether they'll be able to kind of raise their level to compete for a potential Olympic spot a few years down the line, I think that'll be a tough ask for anybody. But I think some of those guys want to, and I think it's always, to me, it's always really exciting to work on something you're passionate about with someone who cares and wants to do it, versus someone who's just kind of there.
So I mean, you said you've kind of bought the house in Portugal as a holiday home. I mean, how did the family kind of take it when you went, by the way, I've decided to go and help out with the Portuguese national team. I'm now the head coach, and it seems to be every different country you go to, you end up like taking on a new coaching role and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's it's just kind of par for the course. I think we're passionate about this game. You try to grow it in ways that you can. Try to find ways that you can make a difference in this game. It's still a growing game, but it's also like I think at a really interesting precipice now. You've had starting to get sponsored athletes. You're starting to get like I said, the Olympic thing. We'll see what funding. I know some countries are getting funding already. So it's you're at this transition point of like, hey, this is no longer go to Hyde Park, have some beers, play some football, and whatever. This is now like we're moving into, this could be a more professional endeavor than it has been in the past. And I've always liked playing football in one of two ways: show up, have fun, and genuinely do not care about the result. Like, that's kind of like your rec league. Boom, I'm here. I show up from 7 to 8, and then we get beers after or whatever. That's kind of how we originally started. Like, it's a fun activity, but hey, I'm not too bothered whether I win or lose. Or two, work your ass off before you get there, while you're outside, train, study, do everything possible to be as good as possible, and then leave it all on the field. But like where I think a lot of guys in the U.S. actually are, not on the U.S. team, but like in the U.S. when you play, are in that middle ground where they're like, I really don't want to lose. Okay, well, do you want to practice? No. And that annoys me to no end. But I think this, where it's like this transition from now being like the kind of whatever sport to like, hey, if you want to be good, you now have to be professional about it. The level of scouting that teams are doing, I find that stuff really fun. But some people would rather just, we show up, we play, we see who's better. But I think those people will get left behind in the new land of flag football, I should say.
My big poppers. So the dummies trying to run me, don't try to do nothing funny.
So comparing looking at all the different countries that you've either coached, played for, played against. Obviously, there's a lot of countries have like a slightly different style of play.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we see it a lot when we see like the World Championships and maybe not so much the Euros, although it is a slight difference. But looking at all those different styles of play, which out of the countries that you've been involved in, what's your kind of preferred style of play or your favorite one to kind of watch?
So I, It's a tough question because there's part of it that's hard for me to separate. Like the thing that I've geared myself towards watching the most a lot of times is like, what are things that I would be capable of doing and how can I learn from them? So as much as I admire and am in awe by what Hoosh and Belt and Powell and these guys do, I just know I never could do that. I can't move like that. But I would watch, the previous quarterback, Eric Holiday, in the U.S., I would just park myself on sidelines that he played on. Because, yeah, sure, he has a better arm than me and such, but, like, he was a drop-back, traditional QB, and he had his flag creativity in there, but it was like, that stuff I could do. And what I really liked about that style, too, is I think for a viewer who hasn't seen flag before and is coming into it, watching, someone like Eric or, kind of that style, I think is a great transition because it looks like football. The arm looks like it belongs on a field. Like when you saw the AFFL stuff and you're playing on these full fields, even these, great flag quarterbacks, their arms don't look like they belong because they don't. But Eric's does. And I think that for a casual fan or a fan who's watched, tackle football and is transitioning to flag, I think that in some ways is a good transition and almost like a better seller versus I think people who more like basketball or like which has a lot more, or NBA basketball, I should say, not college basketball, like which has a lot more just kind of one-on-one, I'm going to run around you, make a move. That to me is a lot more the style of the Mark Belt, Hoosh, Pablo stuff. And it's breathtaking to watch and fast as heck. But I think watching it on TV, when you see the guy run, cut, run, cut, run, cut, run, cut, I think someone's like, well, what am I watching when they're used to watching football? So I think from that perspective, I think probably the style I like to watch most is probably like an Eric Holiday type of, where it still got creativity, still uses double quarterback stuff, but it looks like football. Guys are running routes, timing, throwing, and I think a lot of that requires so much precision and mental acuity that I really admire it. So I think for me, that's what I'm drawn to.
So I got a question from Carlos from Spain asking, what's the toughest defenses you've played against, either club or country?
Yeah. Okay. Toughest defenses. So the ones that come to mind, so in the U.S., I played against every single guy on that U.S. national team, just for their clubs. And there was one time where we played against the Freaks, and they had, some of the old USA guys. They had like Frankie Solomon, Corey Webb, Shaq. Laval was blitzing. That was a really tough defense that we played against. I think the YTG defense, every time we go against them, is just insane. They have J-Day, who's number 21 from U.S., for my money, the best flag football DB in the world. And, they got YG. They got a number of these guys that are just phenomenal athletes, huge competitors. They occasionally they'll have the Calhoun brothers, or one of them, or both of them. Isaiah was on the team this year, or James was there in Alabama. So those teams have been really, really tough, like in the U.S. And I haven't come out on the positive side as often as I've come out on the negative side, but a lot of, for the most part, they've been really good competitive games, and it just teaches you that like there is just not room for error. It teaches you to be accurate. So I really love those. In Europe, that aforementioned, when we played the Denmark team in that Jag Sevens tournament, and that was in 2018, that was a really, really good, tough defense. I think there were a few times I played Spanish defenses where I think they have some good, long, athletic man-to-man cover guys. So them. And then I also think, like, some of the French teams, like, have had some pretty good defenses, like Sphinx and Adrian is always tough to go against, and I think the France defense is just getting better and better. So those would be my answers.
And then one on the other side of the ball. This one's coming in from Jesse Sullivan.
Okay.
Who's your favorite button hookers receiver / center to throw to?
So he put in there /center because then that kind of eliminates Steve, because Steve never played center, and I think Jesse is really looking for this answer to be Jesse Sullivan, and I do love Jesse, but I love Jesse, and only because he's asked this question, I'll say Michael Bradley Bansky.